I'm Morgan, 34, and until 3 months ago, I had what most would call a stable life in Seattle. Then my parents died in a car accident, and everything changed. When their will was read, I was stunned to learn I'd inherited a dilapidated house in rural Montana while my brother Ryan got our family's beautiful mansion in Helena. The confusion and hurt cut deep. My parents had always seemed to love us equally. Now I wondered if that had been an illusion all along. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more stories about family betrayals turned unexpected blessings. The day of the will reading remains painfully vivid in my memory. I sat in the mahogany-paneled office of my parents' attorney, Mr. Harrington, still numb from the funeral 2 days earlier. Ryan sat beside me, our relationship already strained by his insistence on handling all the funeral arrangements without my input. To my son, Ryan James Cooper, I leave our family home at 247 Pinecrest Road in Helena, Montana, along with all its contents and the sum of $200,000, Mr. Harrington read from behind his wire-rimmed glasses. Ryan nodded slightly, as though this was exactly what he expected. I felt a twist in my stomach. To my daughter, Morgan Elizabeth Cooper, I leave our property at 1582 Old Mill Road in Bitterroot Valley, Montana, along with all its contents and the sum of $50,000. The room went silent. I looked up, certain there must be more. "That's it?" I asked. Mr. Harrington looked at me sympathetically. "Yes, that concludes the distribution of your parents' primary assets." I turned to Ryan, whose face remained impassive. "Did you know about this?" "Mom and Dad made their decisions, Morgan." "We should respect that," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. I couldn't make sense of it. The family home in Helena was worth at least $2.8 million, a beautiful Victorian mansion our parents had meticulously restored over 20 years. I'd grown up there, celebrated birthdays in the garden, helped my mother plant roses along the fence. And now it belonged to Ryan. Meanwhile, I'd been left a rundown farmhouse built in the 1920s in one of the most remote parts of Montana. I'd only visited it once as a child when my father wanted to show us his hometown. I remembered peeling paint, creaking floorboards, and a musty smell that clung to my clothes for days afterward. My husband Travis tried to be supportive when I returned home that evening, shell-shocked and tearful. "Maybe there's something we don't understand," he suggested, pouring me a glass of wine. "Your parents wouldn't do this without a reason." "What possible reason could there be for giving Ryan everything and me next to nothing?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Dad always said he was proud of both of us equally." Travis squeezed my shoulder. "We should contest the will. It's clearly unfair." But I couldn't bring myself to do it. Despite the apparent inequity, these were my parents' final wishes. "No," I said firmly. "I don't want to drag this through court. Whatever their reasons, I have to respect their decision." That was the beginning of the tension with Travis. At first, he seemed to accept my choice, but as days passed, his comments grew increasingly pointed. "You're just going to let Ryan walk away with millions while you get a worthless shack?" he asked over dinner a week later. "It's not about the money," I insisted, though the unfairness stung deeply. "Of course it's about the money," Travis countered. "It's always about the money. Ryan knows it. Your parents knew it. Everyone knows it except you." Meanwhile, Ryan had completely withdrawn from my life. My calls went straight to voicemail. When I drove by the family home, I saw construction crews already beginning renovations. I caught a glimpse of Ryan directing workers, looking completely at ease in his new role as master of the estate. I tried reaching out to my parents' friends, searching for any clue about their decision. No one had answers. Some seemed uncomfortable discussing it, changing the subject whenever I brought it up. A month after the will reading, Travis's patience had completely evaporated. I came home from work to find him pacing in our kitchen, my inheritance papers spread across the counter. "I looked up your property," he said without preamble. "It's assessed at less than $80,000, and that's being generous." The land's not even particularly useful for farming. It's literally the definition of worthless. It's not worthless, I defended, though I had no idea what value it might hold. It was important to my dad. He grew up there. And he left it to you as what? A consolation prize? While golden boy Ryan gets set up for life. The argument escalated, bringing up issues in our marriage I hadn't realized were simmering beneath the surface. Travis's accusations grew harsher, that I was weak, that I let people walk all over me, that my refusal to fight for my rightful inheritance was just another example of my spinelessness. I'm done watching you roll over, he finally said, throwing up his hands. Pack a bag and go see this precious inheritance yourself. Don't come back until you grow a backbone and fight for what's yours. I stood there, stunned into silence. Are you kicking me out of our home? Consider it an intervention, Travis said coldly. Maybe hitting rock bottom will finally wake you up. That night, I packed a suitcase through tears, feeling abandoned by everyone I loved. First my parents with their baffling will, then Ryan with his cold shoulder, and now Travis throwing me out when I most needed support. As I loaded my car in the darkness, I made a decision. I would go to Montana. Not because Travis demanded it, but because I needed answers only that house might provide. The drive from Seattle to Bitterroot Valley took nearly 10 hours. I had plenty of time to replay every moment of the past 3 months, questioning everything I thought I knew about my family. The radio kept me company as I watched the landscape transform from urban sprawl to dense forests and finally to the sweeping vistas of western Montana. My GPS directed me down increasingly narrow roads until I found myself on a dirt path barely wide enough for my car. When it finally announced, "You have arrived at your destination," I sat in silence, staring at what was now my property. The 2-story farmhouse stood stark against the Montana sky, its white paint weathered to a dull gray. The wraparound porch sagged in several places, and at least 2 windows were boarded up. The red barn behind it leaned precariously to one side, its roof partially collapsed. Tall grass and wildflowers had reclaimed what might once have been a garden. "Oh, Dad," I whispered. "What were you thinking?" I forced myself to get out of the car, the gravel crunching beneath my feet as I approached the house. The front door stuck, requiring a firm push to open. Inside, dust motes danced in the shafts of afternoon light that managed to penetrate the grimy windows. The air smelled of neglect and forgotten memories. The furnishings were sparse and outdated. A sagging couch with faded floral upholstery, a wooden rocking chair, tables scarred with water rings. The kitchen contained appliances that belonged in a museum, and the cabinets held mismatched dishes coated with dust. I sank onto a kitchen chair, feeling the weight of my situation. My parents were gone. My brother wanted nothing to do with me. My husband had effectively thrown me out. And here I was, in a house that seemed to be actively decomposing around me. A knock at the door startled me from my thoughts. I opened it to find an elderly man with weathered skin and kind eyes. "Thought I saw someone drive up," he said. "You must be Morgan." "I'm Walter Jenkins, your nearest neighbor, though nearest is relative out here." He gestured vaguely toward a rooftop visible on a distant hill. "Nice to meet you," I said, surprised he knew my name. "Your father mentioned you'd be coming eventually," Walter said, his expression unreadable. "My father? You knew him?" Walter nodded. "James came by every few months to check on the place. Kept to himself mostly, but we'd share a coffee now and then." This was news to me. My father came here regularly? He never mentioned that. "Some things a man keeps to himself," Walter said cryptically. "James had his reasons. Not my place to speculate." He handed me a basket covered with a checkered cloth. "Brought you some basics. Store's a good 20 miles from here." After Walter left, his words echoed in my mind. My father had been visiting this place regularly without telling any of us. Why the secrecy? With no mattress in the house, I made a makeshift bed on the living room floor, using blankets from my car. As night fell, the house's creaks and groans kept me company, along with my racing thoughts. Just before sleep claimed me, I made a mental list of tasks for the morning. Check the house's structural integrity, assess what repairs were most urgent, and try to understand why this place had been important enough to my father to feature in his will. Morning brought a new determination. After a breakfast of Walter's homemade bread, I began systematically exploring the house. The ground floor contained the living room, kitchen, a small bathroom, and what might have once been a study. Upstairs were 3 bedrooms and another bathroom with ancient fixtures. As I examined the upstairs hallway, I noticed something odd. The dimensions didn't quite match what I'd expect based on the exterior. There seemed to be missing space. I ran my hands along the wall at the end of the hallway, feeling for inconsistencies. Behind a hanging quilt, I discovered the outline of a door, nearly invisible in the faded wallpaper. There was no handle, no visible way to open it. I stood there, puzzled, when I remembered something. My father's favorite book, The Great Gatsby, which I'd brought with me as a memento. He always kept his copy on his nightstand, reading it repeatedly over the years. On impulse, I retrieved it from my suitcase. Flipping through the pages, I found what I was looking for, an old-fashioned key taped to the inside back cover with a note in my father's handwriting, for when you're ready to understand. My hands trembled as I fitted the key into a nearly invisible keyhole in the hidden door. It turned with surprising ease, and the door swung inward to reveal a room that took my breath away. Unlike the rest of the house, this room was immaculate, preserved exactly as my father must have left it. A roll-top desk dominated one wall, its surface organized with neat stacks of papers. Bookshelves lined another wall, filled with leather-bound volumes. A comfortable leather chair sat angled toward the window, which offered a spectacular view of the distant mountains. This was my father's sanctuary, hidden away in this seemingly worthless house. On the desk lay a sealed envelope with my name written in his familiar handwriting. With shaking fingers, I broke the seal and began to read. My dearest Morgan, the letter began in my father's distinctive handwriting. If you're reading this, then I'm gone and you've found your way to Bitterroot Valley. I'm sorry for the confusion and hurt my decisions have likely caused you. Please know that what might seem like favoritism toward your brother is anything but. This house holds secrets and value that aren't immediately apparent, which is precisely why I've entrusted it to you rather than Ryan. I paused, blinking back tears. My father had anticipated my feelings of betrayal. I continued reading. This property has been in our family for 4 generations. I grew up in these rooms, as did my father before me. What you see as dilapidation, I see as history waiting to be honored. But there's more to this inheritance than sentimentality. In the safe behind your grandmother's portrait in my office, you'll find the beginning of a trail I've left for you. The combination is your birthday. I looked up from the letter to see a large portrait I hadn't noticed before, a stern-faced woman in early 20th century clothing. Carefully lifting it from the wall revealed a small wall safe. I entered my birth date, and the door swung open. Inside was a leather portfolio containing yellowed documents, photographs, and a smaller envelope labeled First Clue. I spread the contents across the desk, overwhelmed by this treasure trove of family history. The photographs showed the house in its prime, a beautiful farmstead with meticulously maintained grounds and a thriving orchard. In one image, a man who strongly resembled my father stood proudly on the porch, dated 1923. The caption identified him as Harold Cooper, my great-grandfather. The documents included the original deed to the property, historical records, and newspaper clippings. One headline from 1925 caught my eye: Cooper Farmhouse designated historical landmark. According to the article, Harold Cooper had been a significant figure in Montana's early conservation movement, using innovative sustainable farming practices decades before they became mainstream. The First Clue envelope contained a cryptic note, where the water flows beneath but never shows. It was written in my father's hand, alongside a small, hand-drawn map of the property with an X marking a spot behind the barn. I spent the rest of the day following my father's elaborate treasure hunt across the property. Each clue led to another, revealing different aspects of the house's history and significance. Behind the barn, I discovered an old well covered by wooden planks containing a waterproof container with more documents and the next clue. This led me to a hollow tree stump holding a key to a locked cabinet in the barn, which contained architectural plans. These weren't just any plans, they were my father's vision for restoring the property. Detailed drawings showed the farmhouse returned to its former glory, the barn converted into an educational center, and the surrounding land transformed into demonstration plots for sustainable agriculture. Attached was a business plan for turning the property into a living history museum and environmental education center. As evening approached, I found myself in the cellar, using my phone's flashlight to examine faded markings on the stone walls. According to my father's clues, this cellar had once been a stop on the Underground Railroad, adding another layer of historical significance to the property. My exploration was interrupted by my phone ringing, Travis calling for the first time since I'd left Seattle. "So, have you come to your senses yet?" he asked without preamble. "I've discovered that this place isn't what it seems," I said, trying to contain my excitement. "Dad left me clues, Travis. This house has incredible historical value, and he had plans for it." "Historical value doesn't pay bills, Morgan," he scoffed. "Ryan's probably already meeting with interior designers for the mansion while you're playing scavenger hunt in a tetanus factory." His dismissal stung, but something had shifted in me. "You don't understand. This isn't just about money." "It's always about money," Travis insisted. "Whatever sentimental journey your father sent you on doesn't change the fact that he left your brother millions and you scraps." After we hung up, I sat on the cellar steps, hurt but increasingly determined. Travis couldn't see what I was beginning to understand. My father had entrusted me with something he valued more than the mansion in Helena. He believed I would appreciate the history, the connection to our ancestors, the potential for preserving something meaningful. The next morning, I ventured into town to buy groceries and was surprised when the elderly cashier recognized my name. "You're James Cooper's daughter?" she asked, her face lighting up. "Your father was such a wonderful man. He would come in whenever he visited and always asked about my grandchildren." Throughout the day, I encountered more people who knew my father. The hardware store owner recalled him buying supplies for small repairs on the farmhouse. The librarian showed me historical records he had researched about the property. Each interaction painted a picture of a man deeply connected to this community and passionate about preserving his family's legacy. When I returned to the farmhouse, I continued following the trail of clues, which led me to a hidden compartment in the attic containing my father's journals. Dating back 20 years, they documented his growing concern about preserving the property's history and his increasing conflict with Ryan over its future. "Ryan visited today." One entry from 5 years ago read, "Once again tried to convince me to sell the farmhouse. Says a developer has made an offer on all the properties in this valley. Can't make him understand that some things are worth more than money. Morgan would understand." I closed the journal, a mixture of emotions washing over me. For years, I had assumed Ryan and my father were close because they seemed to share so many interests. Now I realized their relationship had been strained by fundamental differences in values. And my father had believed in me all along, confident that I would appreciate what he was trying to preserve. As I continued exploring, the house gradually revealed its secrets. What had initially appeared worthless now showed itself to be priceless, not in market value, but in historical significance, in family legacy, in potential for the future. With each discovery, I felt closer to my father and more certain that he had made the right choice in his will. That night, I sat in my father's hidden office, surrounded by his books and papers, feeling his presence strongly. "I'm starting to understand, Dad," I whispered into the quiet room. "But there's still something missing. Why all the secrecy?" Why not tell me about this place while you were alive? The answer, I suspected, lay somewhere in the remaining clues. Tomorrow, I would continue the search. The 5th day of my stay brought the most shocking discoveries yet. Following a clue about Earth's treasures beneath the family tree, I found myself digging at the base of an ancient oak where, according to family photos, generations of Coopers had taken their portraits. 2 feet down, my shovel struck something solid, a metal lockbox. Inside was a thick folder labeled Geological Survey, Cooper Property, Bitterroot Valley. The technical documents were initially confusing, but the executive summary was clear enough. The valley, including my property, contained significant deposits of rare earth minerals essential for manufacturing high-tech components. According to the survey, the mineral rights alone could be worth millions. Attached was a letter from Westland Development Corporation dated just 6 months ago, offering my father $7.5 million for the property. He had rejected it outright, writing "not for sale" at any price across the proposal in red ink. My hands trembled as I processed this information. The worthless property my father had left me was potentially worth far more than the family mansion in Helena. But why hadn't he told me? The answer came in a sealed envelope at the bottom of the box. Morgan, my father wrote, "I've kept this information private because I knew what would happen if Ryan learned of it. The minerals beneath this land are valuable, yes, but extracting them would destroy everything our family has worked to preserve. The house, the historical site, the ecosystem, all would be sacrificed for profit. I'm entrusting you with this knowledge because I believe you value preservation over wealth. Ryan does not." I sat back against the oak tree, stunned. My father hadn't favored Ryan with the mansion. He protected this more valuable property from Ryan's profit-driven mindset by giving it to me. As if summoned by my thoughts, my phone rang. It was my father's lawyer, Mr. Harrington. "Morgan, I've been trying to reach you," he said, his voice urgent. "There are aspects of your inheritance I was instructed to discuss with you in person after you'd had time to explore the property. Can we meet?" The next morning, Mr. Harrington's car kicked up dust as it traveled the long driveway to the farmhouse. He carried a briefcase and wore an expression of concern. "Your father made me promise to wait 1 week after you received the property before revealing certain information," he explained as we sat at the kitchen table. "He wanted you to form your own impressions first." From his briefcase, he produced a thick file. "This contains the complete story of the property and why your father structured his will as he did. The most important element is this: your brother knew about the mineral deposits 3 years ago. He's been working with Westland Development to acquire not just your property, but surrounding parcels as well. Ryan knew." I felt sick. "He's been planning this all along?" "Your father discovered Ryan's involvement accidentally. Ryan had been pressuring him to sell, claiming it was for your father's benefit. When your father refused, Ryan attempted to have him declared incompetent to manage his own affairs. The betrayal cut deep. While I'd been feeling hurt by perceived favoritism, my brother had been plotting against our father, seeing him as an obstacle to millions in profit. There's more," Mr. Harrington continued. "Your father filed for historical landmark status for the property, which was granted 6 months ago. The designation prevents any mining or development that would damage the historical structures or landscape." He handed me the official certification. The property wasn't just historically significant, it was now legally protected. "Ryan doesn't know about this," Mr. Harrington said. "Your father kept it quiet while finalizing the paperwork." The historical designation and the will were his countermoves in a chess game with your brother. As Mr. Harrington drove away, my phone rang again. This time, it was Ryan. "So, how's the dump?" he asked without preamble. His tone was lighter than it had been in months, almost friendly. "It's fascinating, actually," I replied carefully. "I'm learning a lot about our family history." "Look, I've been thinking," Ryan said. "That place is nothing but a burden for you. I know a developer who might be interested. I could handle everything. You wouldn't need to do a thing except sign the papers." "What developer?" I asked, though I already knew. Just a company looking to build in that area. They'd probably offer around $100,000, which is more than fair considering the condition of the place. I nearly laughed at the lowball figure, a fraction of what Westland had offered our father. That's generous of you to look out for me, but I think I'll hold on to it for now. Ryan's friendly tone vanished. Don't be stupid, Morgan. That house is falling apart. The land is useless for farming. Take the money while someone's still willing to offer it. Why are you so interested in me selling a worthless property? I pushed. The silence that followed was telling. I'm trying to help you, he finally said, his voice tight. But if you want to be stubborn, fine. Good luck with your crumbling inheritance. After hanging up, I immediately called Mr. Harrington back. I need everything you have on Westland Development and any connections to my brother. And I need to know more about the historical designation's legal protections. That evening, I spread documents across the kitchen table, creating a timeline of events. 3 years ago, preliminary geological surveys had identified valuable mineral deposits in the valley. 2.5 years ago, Westland began quietly acquiring properties in the area. 2 years ago, Ryan had begun pressuring our father to sell. 1 year ago, my father had applied for historical landmark status without telling Ryan. The pieces were falling into place. My father had seen what was happening and taken steps to protect not just the family property, but the entire valley. The historical designation covered over 80 acres, effectively blocking large-scale mining operations. I was examining land surveys when headlights swept across the front window. A black SUV pulled up, and 2 men in business suits stepped out. I hadn't ordered food or expected visitors, especially this late. Morgan Cooper? The older man asked when I cautiously opened the door. I'm David Mercer, CEO of Westland Development. This is our legal counsel, Jeffrey Winters. We heard you've taken possession of the property and wanted to introduce ourselves. Their unexpected arrival at night felt intimidating, which I suspected was intentional. It's rather late for a business call, I observed. We won't take much of your time, Mercer said with a practiced smile. We simply wanted to express our interest in your property. Your brother mentioned you might be open to selling. Of course, Ryan had contacted them immediately after our call. I'm not considering selling at this time, I said firmly. Mercer's smile tightened. Perhaps you're unaware of the property's condition. Our initial offer of $150,000 is quite generous considering the extensive repairs needed. They'd already raised the offer from what Ryan had mentioned. Thank you for your interest, but as I said, I'm not selling. Ms. Cooper, the lawyer interjected, your father was resistant to progress. We hoped you might be more practical. We're prepared to offer $250,000, but that offer won't remain open indefinitely. Their increasingly transparent attempts at manipulation strengthened my resolve. Gentlemen, it's late, and I'm not interested in selling my family's historical landmark property. Not for $250,000, not for any price. At the words historical landmark, the lawyer's expression changed. What did you say? This property was designated a historical landmark 6 months ago, I said, enjoying their obvious surprise. Any development would require approval from the Historical Preservation Board. Mining is explicitly prohibited. They left shortly after, their friendly facade abandoned. As their SUV disappeared down the driveway, I felt a strange mix of exhilaration and fear. I had powerful enemies now, not just Westland Development, but my own brother. Yet for the first time since my parents' death, I felt certain I was on the right path. The morning after Westland's unannounced visit, I awoke to the sound of a car door slamming. Through the window, I saw Travis climbing out of his BMW, looking up at the house with a mixture of disdain and determination. You look terrible, were his first words when I opened the door. This place is worse than I imagined. What are you doing here, Travis? I asked, suddenly conscious of my unwashed hair and the same clothes I'd been wearing for 2 days. Bringing you to your senses. He pushed past me into the house, wrinkling his nose at the dust and peeling wallpaper. Ryan called me. Said, "You're being stubborn about selling this dump. He's found a buyer willing to pay way more than this place is worth." Did he mention the buyer is a mining company? Or that there are valuable minerals under the property? Or that the house is a protected historical landmark? I countered. Travis's expression shifted. "What are you talking about?" I showed him the geological surveys and the historical designation documents. As he read, his face transformed from skepticism to calculation. "So this place really is valuable," he said slowly. "You should sell. We could buy a much nicer house in Seattle, maybe even a vacation property." I stared at him, disappointed but not surprised. "That's your takeaway? Not that my brother has been lying and manipulating everyone? Not that my father trusted me to preserve something he deeply valued? Be practical, Morgan. Your father is gone. This house is just a building. The land is just dirt. Converting them to cash isn't a betrayal, it's smart business. And what about the historical significance? The environmental impact of mining? The community that would be affected?" Travis shook his head in frustration. "This is why your father left you this problem. You're both idealists disconnected from reality. Ryan understands how the world works." Our argument escalated as it had in Seattle, but something was different now. Travis's words no longer wounded me as they once had. I saw him clearly, a man who measured everything by its monetary value, including our relationship. "I'm not selling," I said finally, "and I'm not coming back to Seattle. Not now, maybe not ever." "You're choosing a decrepit house over our marriage?" Travis asked incredulously. "I'm choosing my integrity over a relationship where I'm valued only when I do what you want." After Travis left, I sat on the porch steps, feeling an unexpected sense of lightness despite the confrontation. The path ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, I was making decisions based on my own values rather than others' expectations. That afternoon, I called Walter, my elderly neighbor, and asked for recommendations for local contractors, lawyers, and historical preservation experts. His network proved invaluable, and within days, I had assembled a team of advisors. Diane Blackfeather, a preservation architect specializing in historical restorations, walked through the house with me, identifying structural issues and original features worth saving. "Your great-grandfather was ahead of his time," she explained, pointing out innovative ventilation systems and passive solar design elements. "This house was built to work with the environment, not against it." That's rare for the 1920s. Tom Saunders, an environmental lawyer with experience fighting mining companies, helped me understand the legal protections the historical designation provided and where vulnerabilities might exist. "Westland won't give up easily," he warned. "They've invested millions acquiring surrounding properties. Expect them to challenge the historical designation or try to find loopholes." Through Walter, I connected with the Bitterroot Valley Historical Society, whose members embraced my desire to preserve the property. They shared stories about my great-grandfather and his contributions to sustainable agriculture in Montana. With their help, I began researching grants and funding opportunities for historical restoration projects. As my vision for the property solidified, Ryan escalated his efforts to undermine me. First came a letter from his lawyer, claiming I had misled him about the property's value and demanding a fair redistribution of our parents' assets. Then I discovered he had approached several of my neighbors with purchase offers well above market value, attempting to isolate my property. The most unsettling move came when I learned he had filed a petition challenging our father's mental competence at the time the will was written. The legal papers portrayed our father as delusional and obsessed with conspiracy theories about mining companies. "It's a desperate play," Tom assured me after reviewing the petition. "Your father had the historical designation approved just months before his death. The Preservation Board conducted multiple interviews with him during the process. There's ample evidence of his mental clarity. Still, the legal challenge would be expensive and emotionally draining. I called Mr. Harrington for advice. "Your father anticipated this," he told me. There's a video statement he recorded specifically addressing his decisions and mental state. He asked me to hold it in reserve, using it only if Ryan took legal action. The next day, I received a copy of the video. Watching my father, healthy, clear-eyed, and articulate, explain his decisions brought both tears and determination. He detailed Ryan's attempts to pressure him into selling, his discovery of Ryan's connection to Westland, and his deliberate choice to leave the property to me because he trusted my judgment. "Morgan has always seen value beyond dollar signs," he said toward the end of the recording. "She understands that our legacy isn't measured in bank accounts, but in the positive impact we have on the world around us." The Cooper farmhouse represents 4 generations of that philosophy. I entrust it to the child who will honor that tradition. Armed with this evidence, I instructed Tom to respond aggressively to Ryan's petition. We also prepared documentation for the Historical Preservation Board, reinforcing the property's significance and our commitment to its restoration. 2 weeks after arriving in Montana, I called a meeting at the farmhouse with my growing team of allies, Diane the architect, Tom the lawyer, Walter representing the neighbors, and several members of the Historical Society. Spread across the kitchen table were architectural plans, legal documents, and my father's journals. "Westland and my brother want this to be about money," I told the group. But my father understood it's really about values. "This house represents a philosophy of living in harmony with history and nature. That's what we're fighting to preserve." Together, we developed a comprehensive strategy. We would restore the house to its historical significance while adapting it for modern educational purposes. We would pursue grants and create a nonprofit foundation to oversee the property. Most importantly, we would build community support to create a buffer against Westland's pressure tactics. As everyone left that evening, Walter lingered behind. "Your father would be proud," he said simply. "He always said you were the one who understood what matters." That night, I sat in my father's hidden office, surrounded by his books and papers, feeling more connected to him than I had since his death. "I get it now, Dad," I whispered. "And I won't let you down." The transformation began with the house itself. Under Diane's guidance, I hired local craftspeople skilled in historical restoration. Many reduced their rates when they learned about the project's significance and my battle against Westland. Frank Runningwolf, a master carpenter whose grandfather had worked with my great-grandfather, took particular interest in restoring the wraparound porch. "My grandfather helped build this porch in 1924, he told me as we replaced rotted boards. He said Harold Cooper insisted on using local lumber, sustainably harvested. That wasn't common thinking back then." Inside, we carefully removed damaged wallpaper to reveal original beadboard in some rooms and hand-painted murals in others. Behind a bathroom wall that had been added in the 1950s, we discovered a hidden alcove containing antique farming implements and journals dating back to the 1890s. Each discovery increased the property's historical value. Diane documented everything meticulously for the Historical Preservation Board, strengthening our position against any challenges to the landmark status. The work was physically demanding and expensive. I channeled the $50,000 from my inheritance into urgent structural repairs, but it wouldn't cover the full restoration. Tom helped me establish the Cooper Heritage Foundation, allowing us to apply for preservation grants. The Bitterroot Valley Historical Society contributed both funds and volunteer labor. As word spread about the project, local media took interest. The Bitterroot Gazette ran a feature story about the house's history and my efforts to preserve it. A reporter from the Montana Heritage Quarterly spent 3 days on the property, resulting in an 8-page spread highlighting the Cooper family's contributions to sustainable agriculture. The publicity brought unexpected allies. A professor from Montana State University brought archaeology students to properly excavate and document historical artifacts found on the property. A documentary filmmaker began recording the restoration process, and conducting interviews with community members who remembered my father and grandfather. Not everyone supported my efforts. As the profile of the project grew, so did resistance from Westland Development. They hired experts to challenge the historical designation, claiming the property had been substantially altered from its original state. They launched a publicity campaign emphasizing the economic benefits their mining operation would bring to the county. Most troubling was their success in turning some neighbors against me. Those whose properties weren't protected by historical designation saw Westland's offers as their only chance at financial security. Signs appeared along nearby roads. Cooper's selfishness costs jobs, and history won't feed our families. Through it all, Ryan remained my most determined opponent. When legal challenges to the will failed, he tried a more personal approach. One evening, he showed up unannounced at the farmhouse. "This place is looking better," he admitted grudgingly, surveying the partially restored porch. "You've put a lot of work into it." "That sounds almost like a compliment," I said, cautiously offering him a seat on the porch swing. "Look, Morgan, we've been fighting for months. It's exhausting. I miss my sister." His tone was conciliatory, but something in his eyes remained calculating. "What if we found a compromise? Westland would pay you $5 million for just the mineral rights. You could keep the house and surrounding 5 acres with the historical designation intact." The offer was tempting, financially generous, and seemingly reasonable. But I remembered my father's words about the ecosystem being as valuable as the house itself. "The minerals can't be extracted without damaging the groundwater and surrounding landscape," I said. "You know that." Dad knew that. Ryan's friendly facade cracked. Dad was living in the past. He couldn't see the bigger picture. Actually, I think he saw a much bigger picture than either of us initially understood. I stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. "I'm not selling, Ryan. Not the house, not the land, not the mineral rights." His expression hardened. "Then prepare for a fight. Westland has resources you can't imagine. This little preservation project will crumble just like this house should have years ago." After Ryan left, I wondered if I was being foolishly stubborn. $5 million could do a lot of good, including proper restoration of the house. But that night, I dreamed of my father showing me the native plants on the property, explaining how they cleaned the groundwater that fed the valley. I woke with renewed certainty that I was making the right choice. The next phase of the project brought unexpected joy. As we cleared decades of overgrowth from the property, we discovered the remains of my great-grandfather's experimental garden. With help from the university's agricultural department, we began restoring it using his original notes as a guide. The barn, which had seemed beyond saving, revealed its own surprises. Beneath collapsed sections of roof, we found an intact workshop containing handcrafted tools and furniture. More valuable were the detailed plans for water conservation systems that had been revolutionary in the 1920s but remained relevant today. 3 months into the restoration, Travis filed for separation. His lawyer's letter cited irreconcilable differences and abandonment of the marital home. Reading it, I felt sadness, but no regret. The woman who had left Seattle under pressure from her husband no longer existed. In her place was someone stronger, more purposeful, more true to herself. I responded with a simple agreement to his terms, requesting only my personal belongings from our shared home. My life was in Montana now, among people who valued what I valued. As summer turned to fall, the Cooper farmhouse slowly reclaimed its dignity. Fresh, white paint brightened its exterior. Repaired windows reflected the mountain sunlight. The porch no longer sagged, but offered a welcoming space for the growing number of visitors interested in the property's history. Inside, we preserved as much original material as possible while making the space functional for its new purpose as an educational center. We installed modern plumbing and electricity, but kept the character-rich imperfections that told the story of a house well lived in across generations. The most gratifying moments came when elderly community members visited and shared memories of the house in earlier days. Marian Wilkins, 92, arrived with photographs of herself as a child attending harvest festivals on the property in the 1930s. "Your grandfather believed farming wasn't just about growing food," she told me. "It was about growing community. Every fall, he'd invite everyone in the valley to celebrate the harvest together, share knowledge, help neighbors in need." Inspired by these stories, I organized a harvest festival of our own. Despite resistance from Westland supporters, over 200 people attended. Many brought historical photos and documents related to the Cooper family, further enriching our archives. Local farmers showcased sustainable practices inspired by my great-grandfather's methods. Children planted heritage seeds in the restored garden. Ryan made one final attempt to derail the project by revealing what he considered damaging family secrets. At a county meeting discussing Westland's permit applications, he publicly claimed our father had hidden mental health issues and had become obsessed with conspiracy theories in his final years. Instead of responding directly, I invited county officials to tour the property and view my father's meticulous records, architectural plans, and video testimony. His clarity of purpose and vision spoke for itself. By early winter, the Cooper Heritage Foundation had received its first major grant. The $350,000 award would fund completion of the house restoration and development of educational programs focused on sustainable agriculture and historical preservation. When a reporter asked what had driven me to fight so hard for a property I'd initially thought worthless, I found myself quoting my father, "Value isn't always visible at first glance. Sometimes you have to look beneath the surface to find what really matters." As the first snow dusted the restored farmhouse, I stood on the porch with Walter, surveying our work. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "when your father first told me he was leaving this place to you instead of Ryan, I wondered if he was making a mistake. Ryan seemed so capable, so sure of himself. But James insisted you were the one who could see the true value here." "I almost didn't," I admitted. "If Travis hadn't essentially kicked me out, I might never have come to understand what Dad was trying to preserve." Walter nodded. "Sometimes the hardest paths lead to the most important destinations." Looking out over the property that had transformed both itself and me over the past months, I couldn't have agreed more. The final confrontation with Ryan came on the one-year anniversary of our parents' death. I had organized a memorial service at the fully restored farmhouse, inviting family, friends, and community members to celebrate my parents' legacy. To my surprise, Ryan attended. He arrived early, before other guests, looking uncomfortable but determined. "This place really has changed," he said, taking in the gleaming woodwork and period-appropriate furnishings. "I hardly recognize it. Would you like a tour?" I offered cautiously. As we walked through rooms now restored to their historical beauty while accommodating modern educational purposes, Ryan remained silent. In what had been my father's hidden office, now a research library, he finally spoke. "Dad never showed me any of this," he said quietly. "Never told me about the historical significance or his restoration plans. Did you ever ask?" I countered. "Or did you only talk about selling?" His expression confirmed my suspicion. "I thought I was being practical," he said defensively. "Property like this is a money pit without end. It's also a connection to our history, our family's values," I said. "That's what Dad was trying to preserve." Before Ryan could respond, we heard cars arriving. The confrontation I had anticipated didn't materialize. Instead, Ryan moved quietly through the memorial service, listening as friends and neighbors shared stories about our parents that revealed dimensions he had never appreciated. After most guests had left, Ryan approached me on the porch. "I've been fighting the wrong battle," he admitted reluctantly. "Westland's latest environmental impact report shows the mining would cause more damage than they initially disclosed. I can't support that regardless of the profit." His words stunned me. "What about your involvement with them? The contracts?" "I've withdrawn from the partnership," he said. "It's cost me professionally and financially, but I couldn't look at what you've accomplished here and continue working to destroy it." While Ryan's concession didn't immediately heal our relationship, it marked the beginning of a cautious reconciliation. More importantly, it removed the most serious threat to the property's future. With Ryan's opposition ended, Westland Development found themselves increasingly isolated. Their permit applications faced intense scrutiny from environmental agencies, now alerted to potential issues. Local opposition to their projects grew as community members rallied around the alternative vision represented by the Cooper Heritage Project. 6 months later, they abandoned their mining plans in the valley, selling their acquired properties to a conservation trust at a significant loss. The victory felt less like triumph over an enemy and more like affirmation of my father's wisdom in protecting something irreplaceable. Travis made one final attempt at reconciliation when news of the Foundation's second major grant made regional headlines. He arrived unannounced, just as he had a year earlier, but this time with a bouquet of flowers and practiced humility. "I was wrong," he said, standing awkwardly in the entryway. "I didn't understand what you saw in this place. But you've created something remarkable here." A year earlier, his approval would have meant everything to me. Now, I recognized it for what it was, acknowledgement of success rather than understanding of purpose. "Thank you," I said sincerely. "But we want different things from life, Travis. We always did. I just couldn't see it clearly before." Our divorce finalized without acrimony. Travis returned to Seattle and his definition of success. I remained in Montana, building a life aligned with values I'd discovered were mine all along. The grand opening of the Cooper Heritage Center attracted visitors from across the state. University researchers presented findings on my great-grandfather's agricultural innovations that remained relevant to modern sustainability challenges. Local schools developed curriculum around the property's historical significance. Tourism brought unexpected economic benefits to the community that had initially resisted my preservation efforts. On a perfect autumn day, much like the one when I'd first arrived at the property, I sat on the porch with a leather-bound journal my father had left in the hidden safe. I had saved it for last, somehow knowing it contained his most personal thoughts. The final entry, dated just weeks before the accident that took his life, brought tears to my eyes. "Visited the farmhouse today. The restoration will be Morgan's project, not mine. She doesn't know it yet, but this property will be her inheritance. Ryan won't understand my decision, seeing only the monetary difference between this and the Helena house. But Morgan will eventually discover what I've always seen in her, the ability to recognize value beyond price tags. This land doesn't need someone who will exploit it for profit. It needs a guardian who will honor its past while securing its future. Morgan is that guardian, though she doesn't yet know her own strength. This inheritance isn't just about preserving family history, it's about giving my daughter the opportunity to discover who she truly is." His words confirmed what I had gradually come to understand throughout my journey. What had initially seemed like an unfair inheritance was actually a profound gift, not just of property, but of purpose. My father had known me better than I knew myself, recognizing potential I hadn't yet discovered. The rundown house that had once seemed worthless had revealed layers of value, historical significance, environmental importance, community heritage, and personal growth. By entrusting it to me rather than Ryan, my father hadn't been showing favoritism, but profound understanding of his children's characters and capabilities. Now, as I watched visitors exploring the property that had transformed both itself and me, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for my father's wisdom. What had begun as a painful journey of perceived rejection had become a path to self-discovery and meaningful contribution. The Cooper farmhouse stood proudly against the Montana sky, no longer crumbling but restored, not just to its former glory but to renewed purpose. Like the house, I too had been restored, finding strength I hadn't known I possessed and values that would guide me forward. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting golden light across the porch where generations of my family had sat before me. I felt my father's presence strongly. "I understand now, Dad," I whispered. "Thank you for believing in me before I believed in myself." Have you ever received a gift that seemed disappointing at first but turned out to be exactly what you needed? Or discovered strength in yourself that you didn't know existed? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey of discovery resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might need a reminder that sometimes what appears to be our greatest challenge becomes our most meaningful opportunity. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I wish you the wisdom to recognize the true value in your own life's unexpected inheritances.